Dr. Elena Vasquez had been digging in the wrong place for 3 months before she realized she was digging in exactly the right place. The archaeological site outside Cairo should have contained pottery shards and maybe some bronze tools from ancient Egypt. Instead, her team had unearthed something that made her question everything she knew about human history. The metallic object was perfectly preserved despite being buried for what carbon dating suggested was over 12,000 years. It was roughly the size of a dinner plate, made from a material that seemed to shift between silver and deep blue, depending on the angle of observation. Strange symbols covered its surface, symbols that looked almost familiar but belonged to no known human language. "Professor, you need to see this," called out Marcus Chen, her graduate assistant, from the far end of the excavation site. His voice carried an odd tension that made Elena drop her brushes and hurry over. Marcus was kneeling beside a larger object, partially exposed in the ancient sand. As Elena approached, her breath caught in her throat. It was clearly artificial, clearly technological, and clearly not human in origin. The object appeared to be some kind of control panel or communication device, covered in the same shifting metal and incomprehensible symbols as the smaller artifact. "How deep?" Elena asked, though she already dreaded the answer. 15 meters down, in the same geological layer as the smaller piece. Carbon dating puts it at approximately 12,300 years old, plus or minus 50 years. Elena stared at the impossible artifact. 12,000 years ago, humans were barely beginning to develop agriculture. They were using stone tools and living in small tribal groups. They certainly weren't creating advanced technology that looked like it belonged on a spaceship. "Have you activated the resonance scanner?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "The readings are off the charts. Whatever this thing is made of, it's not naturally occurring on Earth. The molecular structure is completely unknown." As Elena knelt beside the artifact, she noticed something that made her heart race. Some of the symbols weren't entirely foreign. Hidden among the alien markings were shapes that resembled early human pictographs, primitive drawings that seemed to tell a story. She spent the next 6 hours carefully documenting every symbol, every line, every detail of the strange device. As night fell over the dig site, Elena remained hunched over the artifact with a portable light, making detailed sketches and photographs. The more she studied the symbols, the more a terrifying picture began to emerge. The pictographs seemed to show the Earth from space, something impossible for ancient humans to have known. They showed other worlds, other stars, and what appeared to be large ships moving between them. But most disturbing of all, they showed humans, clearly recognizable as humans, but alongside other figures that were definitely not human. "Elena, you've been out here for hours," said Dr. James Wheeler, the expedition's senior archaeologist, as he approached with a steaming cup of coffee. "You need to get some rest." "James, look at this," Elena said, pointing to a series of symbols she had been analyzing. "These pictographs, they're telling a story, but it's a story that shouldn't be possible." James squinted at the markings in the artificial light. "What do you think they're depicting?" "Contact," Elena whispered. "First contact, but not recent contact. Ancient contact. 12,000 years ago, something came to Earth and made contact with early humans." James was quiet for a long moment. "Elena, that's an extraordinary claim. Do you understand the implications of what you're suggesting?" Elena nodded grimly. "I understand perfectly, but look at the sequence here." She traced her finger along the series of symbols. These figures represent humans, clearly. These larger figures with different proportions represent something else, something non-human. And these symbols here, they show interaction, communication, maybe even cooperation. Or conflict, James added quietly, pointing to another section where the symbols seemed to depict some kind of confrontation. Elena had been thinking the same thing. The latter part of the pictographic sequence was darker, showing what appeared to be the non-human figures departing but not peacefully. There were symbols that could represent destruction, others that might indicate warning or threat. "There's something else," Elena said, pulling out a separate set of photographs. "The smaller artifact, the disc-shaped one. I think it might be some kind of recording device." "Recording device?" "Elena, that's impossible." "The technology doesn't exist, not even today." "Doesn't it?" Elena challenged. "James, we both know that human technological development has been inconsistent throughout history. We've had periods of incredible advancement followed by dark ages where knowledge was lost. What if 12,000 years ago we weren't as primitive as we think we were? What if we had help?" As if summoned by her words, the smaller artifact began to emit a soft, pulsing light. Both archaeologists stepped back in alarm, but the light was gentle, almost inviting. The symbols on its surface began to shift and rearrange themselves, and suddenly Elena could read them. Not because they had changed into English or any human language, but because somehow, impossibly, she understood what they meant. The artifact was responding to her presence, to her attention, to her desire to understand. The message was simple and terrifying. Warning received. Compliance period expired. Observation protocols terminated. Species classification updated from restricted primitive to evolutionary threat. Galactic Council enforcement action authorized. Planetary quarantine will be maintained through direct intervention. Human technological advancement must be prevented by any means necessary. Elena staggered backward as the meaning of the words hit her like a physical blow. James, are you seeing this? But James was staring at the larger artifact, which had also begun to glow. More symbols were appearing. Different from the warning message, these were more recent additions to the ancient record. Elena, this isn't 12,000 years old. Look at the dating on these new symbols. This thing is still active. It's been recording for 12,000 years, documenting human development, reporting to whoever sent it. The implications crashed over Elena like a tidal wave. Humanity hadn't been alone in developing civilization. They had been watched, monitored, and apparently restricted in their growth. 12,000 years ago, someone or something had visited Earth and decided that humans needed to be kept primitive, kept ignorant of their true potential, but the most terrifying realization was yet to come. As more symbols appeared on the artifacts, Elena began to understand that the monitoring hadn't been passive. Throughout human history, every time humanity had come close to major technological breakthroughs, every time they had approached the level of advancement that might allow them to leave Earth and spread to other worlds, something had happened to set them back. The fall of advanced civilizations. The loss of ancient knowledge. Wars that destroyed centuries of progress. Natural disasters that wiped out centers of learning. All of it, according to the alien record, had been carefully orchestrated to keep humanity trapped on Earth. My God, James whispered, reading over Elena's shoulder as she deciphered more of the alien text. They've been sabotaging us for 12,000 years. Every time we got close to real spaceflight, real interstellar capability, they knocked us back down. But there was more. The most recent entries in the alien record indicated that something had changed. Humanity's technological advancement in the past century had been too rapid, too comprehensive to easily sabotage. The Watchers were concerned that humans were approaching a level of development that would make them impossible to contain. Elena, look at this final entry, James said, his voice shaking. It's dated yesterday. The message was brief but chilling. Human space capability confirmed. Multiple successful orbital missions detected. Preliminary exploration of neighboring celestial bodies initiated. Species containment protocol has failed. Recommend immediate transition to active suppression measures. Authorization pending from Galactic Council. Estimated response time 72 hours. Elena felt the blood drain from her face. 72 hours from yesterday. That means we have less than 24 hours before something arrives to stop human space exploration permanently, James finished. As the artifacts continued to pulse with alien light, Elena realized that she and James had just uncovered the greatest secret in human history. For 12,000 years, humanity had been kept as prisoners on their own planet by an alien civilization that viewed them as too dangerous to be allowed to spread to the stars. But now the secret was out. The question was, what could humanity do with less than 24 hours to prepare for the arrival of an alien force that had been successfully controlling their development for 12 millennia? Elena looked up at the stars, visible through the clear desert night, and realized that tomorrow might be the last day humans would be allowed to dream of walking among them, unless, somehow, they could find a way to fight back against an enemy they had never known existed. The cosmic mistake hadn't been made yet, but Elena could see it coming, and she knew that when it happened, it would awaken something in humanity that their alien watchers had never anticipated and could never control. Human fury, backed into a corner, had moved mountains. Tomorrow, they would discover what it could do to those who dared to cage the stars themselves. Admiral Sarah Chen had been expecting the call ever since her niece Marcus had sent her the emergency message from Egypt. What she hadn't expected was to be standing in the Pentagon's deepest situation room 18 hours later, surrounded by representatives from every major space agency and military command on Earth, staring at satellite imagery that defied explanation. "Ladies and gentlemen," said General Patricia Hayes, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, "as of 030 hours this morning, our deep space monitoring stations detected an object entering the outer edge of our solar system. Size, approximately 8 kilometers in length. Shape, clearly artificial. Origin unknown. Speed impossible. The room erupted in murmured conversations and shouted questions, but Sarah remained focused on the data streaming across the massive display screens. Her years as commander of the International Space Station had taught her to read orbital mechanics like a native language, and what she was seeing violated every law of physics she knew.
Impossible! How?
Yuki Tanaka, from the Japanese Space Agency. The object decelerated from near-light speed to relative rest in less than 6 minutes, General Hayes replied. According to our calculations, the G-forces involved should have turned anything inside into atomic paste, but the object is intact and appears to be under intelligent control. Sarah stepped forward. General, what's our current assessment of intent? Unknown, but we're not taking any chances. DEFCON 2 was authorized 20 minutes ago. All nuclear forces are on standby, all space-capable assets are being moved to defensive positions, and we're coordinating with our allies on a planetary response. Planetary response? Dr. Klaus Weber from the European Space Agency looked incredulous. You're talking about Earth defending itself against an alien civilization that has technology we can't even comprehend. What could we possibly do? Sarah understood Klaus's disbelief, but she also understood something he didn't. In the 18 hours since Marcus had sent her the archaeological data, she had been reading everything Elena Vasquez had translated from the alien artifacts. Humanity hadn't just been watched for 12,000 years. They had been deliberately held back, sabotaged, and controlled. Dr. Weber, with respect, I think you're underestimating what humans can accomplish when we're properly motivated, Sarah said. We've never had the chance to develop technology without interference. We've never had the opportunity to unite against a common external threat, and we've never been pushed into a corner where our only options were submission or extinction. Admiral Chen makes a good point, added Colonel Viktor Petrov from the Russian Space Command. In my experience, humans are most dangerous when they have nothing left to lose. The discussion was interrupted by an urgent alert from the tracking stations. The alien vessel had changed course and was now heading directly toward Earth. Estimated arrival time, 14 hours. General Hayes, Sarah said, I need authorization to contact the International Space Station and begin emergency protocols. What kind of protocols, Admiral? The kind we never thought we'd need but hoped we'd never have to use. Sarah's expression was grim. For the past 5 years, we've been quietly developing contingency plans for exactly this scenario. Project Lighthouse. Several people in the room looked confused, but General Hayes nodded slowly. The theoretical defense protocols. I thought those were just academic exercises. They were until this morning, Sarah confirmed. But we've had some very creative minds working on the problem of asymmetric space warfare. The basic premise is simple. If an enemy has superior technology, you don't try to match their technology. You use your advantages. What advantages could we possibly have against an alien civilization? Dr. Tanaka asked. Sarah smiled for the first time since entering the room, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Numbers, unpredictability, and something that 12,000 years of sabotage apparently couldn't breed out of us. Pure, stubborn human determination. Over the next several hours, as the alien vessel continued its approach, Sarah coordinated a response that would have seemed impossible just days earlier. Every space agency on Earth began implementing protocols that had existed only in theoretical documents. Every satellite capable of being weaponized was quietly repurposed. Every piece of space debris large enough to cause damage was cataloged and prepared for use, but the real work was happening in locations that didn't officially exist. In underground facilities beneath the Nevada desert, engineers were making final adjustments to weapon systems that had been developed in absolute secrecy. In hidden bases in Siberia, Russian scientists were activating experimental technologies that violated half a dozen international treaties. In secure compounds beneath the Swiss Alps, European researchers were powering up devices that they had hoped never to use. Admiral, called out Lieutenant Commander Jackson from the communications station, we're receiving a transmission from the approaching vessel. Put it on speakers. The voice that filled the situation room was clearly artificial, but there was something about its tone that suggested barely controlled fury. It spoke in perfect, unaccented English. Inhabitants of the third planet, you have violated the terms of your containment. Your species was classified as restricted primitive and forbidden from developing interstellar capability. Your recent achievements in space exploration represent a direct violation of Galactic Council Directive 1247 Alpha. You have 72 minutes to demonstrate compliance by deactivating all orbital assets and grounding all space-capable vehicles. Failure to comply will result in the implementation of aggressive containment protocols. The room was silent for nearly a minute before Sarah spoke. Open a channel. Admiral, are you sure that's wise? General Hayes asked. They've been controlling us for 12,000 years, General. I think it's time we had a conversation. Lieutenant Commander Jackson nodded. Channel open. Sarah stepped up to the communications array and spoke clearly. This is Admiral Sarah Chen, representing the Unified Space Commands of Earth. We reject your authority and deny your right to restrict human development. We did not agree to your containment protocols, and we will not comply with your demands. The response was immediate and cold. Your compliance is not optional. Your species has demonstrated aggressive expansion tendencies and must be contained for the safety of the galactic community. You will submit to restriction, or you will be restricted through force. And I guess you're going to have to try to restrict us through force, Sarah replied. But I should warn you of something. You've been watching us for 12,000 years, sabotaging our development, setting us back every time we tried to reach for the stars. What you apparently never learned about humans is that we don't just survive adversity, we thrive on it. Your technology is primitive. Your weapons are ineffective against our defensive systems. You will comply or you will be contained permanently. Sarah's smile returned, colder than before. You want to know what your biggest mistake was? It wasn't underestimating human technology. Your biggest mistake was giving us 12,000 years to develop the one thing that no advanced, peaceful civilization ever needs to develop. Explain. Tactics for fighting against superior enemies. Strategies for asymmetric warfare. Methods for turning weakness into strength and disadvantage into advantage. You see, when you're the most violent, aggressive, unpredictable species on your planet, when you've spent your entire evolutionary history fighting against creatures bigger, stronger, and better armed than you are, when you've had to claw your way to the top of the food chain through sheer bloody-minded refusal to give up, you learn things that more advanced civilizations never need to know. Your point? My point is that you're about to learn why humans survived the Ice Age, why we conquered every environment on Earth, why we turned wolves into dogs and turned fire into nuclear weapons. You're about to learn why the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't a superior technology or an advanced civilization. Sarah paused, looking around the room at the faces of the most capable military and scientific minds Earth had to offer, all focused on the same impossible task. The most dangerous thing in the galaxy is a human being who has been told they can't do something. The alien response was immediate. Compliance deadline, 15 minutes. Submit or face consequences. Sarah looked at General Hayes, who nodded grimly. All stations, this is Admiral Chen. Operation Lighthouse is now active. Repeat, Operation Lighthouse is now active. All units move to attack positions. Across the solar system, human space assets that had appeared to be simple satellites and research stations began revealing their true purpose. Weapons that had been disguised as communication arrays powered up. Experimental engines that violated known physics began generating thrust. Most importantly, thousands of pieces of space debris, asteroids, and dead satellites began moving toward carefully calculated positions. The aliens had superior technology, superior weapons, and superior defenses, but they had made one crucial error in their assessment of the human threat. They had assumed that humans would fight like a civilized species. They had assumed wrong. In the next few minutes, the aliens were about to discover that humans didn't become the dominant species on Earth by fighting fair. They did it by fighting dirty, fighting smart, and never, ever giving up. The cosmic mistake was about to be made, and it would awaken something that 12,000 years of manipulation had tried to suppress, but had only made stronger. Human ingenuity wasn't just about building better tools. It was about finding ways to win when winning should be impossible. And today, impossibility was just another problem to be solved. The alien vessel hung in space like a metallic cathedral, its 8-kilometer bulk reflecting Earth's sunlight in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. Captain Maria Santos, commander of the disguised weapons platform that Earth's databases listed as Communications Satellite Delta 7, watched through her targeting systems as the impossible ship prepared to demonstrate why humans should fear superior technology. All units, this is Lighthouse Control, came Admiral Chen's voice through the encrypted channel. Enemy vessel is charging what appears to be a primary weapon system. Estimated target, International Space Station. We will not allow them to make the first aggressive move against a civilian target. Maria's hands tightened on her controls. The ISS housed 14 people, including 2 children who were part of an educational program. The aliens wanted to start with a demonstration that would break human morale before the real fighting began. They had chosen the wrong species for psychological warfare. Delta, 7 to control, we have targeting solution on enemy vessel. Requesting permission to engage, permission granted. Delta, 7. All units, initiate Operation Lighthouse. Show them what humans do to bullies. Maria pressed the firing stud, and Delta, 7, revealed its true nature. What had appeared to be a simple communications array unfolded into a railgun platform, launching a tungsten rod the size of a telephone pole at a significant fraction of the speed of light. The projectile struck the alien vessel's shields and vanished in a flash of energy that could be seen from Earth's surface. The ship didn't even shake. Delta 7. To control, direct hit, no apparent damage. Their shields are stronger than anticipated. Copy Delta 7. All units switch to Phase 2. Let's see how they handle multiple targets. Across the solar system, dozens of supposedly dead satellites and pieces of space junk suddenly came alive. Hidden engines ignited, concealed weapon systems deployed, and what the aliens had cataloged as harmless debris transformed into a swarm of attacking drones. The alien response was swift and terrifying. Energy beams lanced out from the massive vessel, each one capable of vaporizing a human spacecraft instantly. But the first wave of attacking drones lasted less than 30 seconds against the alien point defense systems. But the humans had planned for this. Phase 3, all units, Admiral Chen ordered. Time to show them what we learned from 12,000 years of being the underdogs. The second wave of attacks came not from obvious weapons platforms, but from objects the aliens hadn't considered threats. A mining asteroid suddenly changed course and began accelerating toward the alien vessel, its internal cargo of refined uranium and plutonium turning it into a massive, dirty bomb. A defunct weather satellite revealed fusion engines and began broadcasting every human transmission it had ever recorded, flooding the alien communication systems with 12,000 years of human voices, human music, human stories, and human defiance. Most effective of all were the sleeper platforms. For 5 years, human engineers had been quietly hiding weapons inside seemingly innocent space infrastructure. The alien vessel found itself under attack from components of the International Space Station itself, from communication relays that had been broadcasting peaceful messages for decades, from research platforms that had been studying cosmic radiation and solar weather. The aliens adapted quickly, their point defense systems becoming more efficient with each wave of attacks. But they were fighting according to the rules of civilized warfare, trying to minimize damage while demonstrating superior force. The humans weren't. Control, this is Captain Rodriguez on mining platform Bravo 6. We're in position for the main event. Admiral Chen's voice carried a grim satisfaction. Confirmed, Bravo 6. You are authorized for kinetic bombardment. Make it count. Rodriguez had been a weapons engineer before the mining job, and he had spent 3 years preparing for this moment. Bravo 6 wasn't just a mining platform. It was a delivery system for the largest weapons cache humanity had ever assembled in space. The platform split apart like a flower opening, revealing its cargo. Inside were 17 nuclear warheads, each one modified with experimental antimatter triggers that Earth's physicists had been developing in secret for decades. But the warheads weren't aimed at the alien vessel. They were aimed at the asteroid field that Rodriguez had spent 3 years carefully positioning around the alien ship's projected location. The nuclear detonations turned 17 carefully selected asteroids into clouds of high-velocity debris, creating a sphere of destruction around the alien vessel that even their superior technology couldn't completely deflect. For the first time since arriving in Earth's solar system, the alien ship's shields flickered. Damage assessment control. Enemy shields down to approximately 60% efficiency. Copy that, Rodriguez. All units, concentrate fire on the damaged shield sectors. Time to show them that humans don't fight fair. But the aliens had finally realized what they were facing. The massive vessel began to move, its impossible engines pushing it out of the debris cloud while its weapons systems switched from point defense to area denial. Energy beams swept space in wide arcs, creating zones of superheated plasma that no human technology could survive. Control, this is Delta 7. They're changing tactics. We can't get close enough for effective attacks. I see it, Delta 7. Time for Phase 4. Maria Santos had heard about Phase 4 in theoretical discussions, but she had hoped they would never need to implement it. Phase 4 was the acknowledgement that humans couldn't win through superior technology or conventional tactics. Phase 4 was terrorism. All units, this is Admiral Chen. We are switching to asymmetric warfare protocols. Target priority is no longer the enemy vessel. Target priority is making them understand that humans are not controllable. The surviving human forces suddenly stopped trying to damage the alien ship. Instead, they began targeting the ship's obvious scientific equipment, its external sensors, anything that looked like it was designed to study or monitor rather than fight. The message was clear. If you want to watch us, you'll have to do it through the smoke of your burning equipment. More importantly, several disguised platforms began broadcasting toward deep space, sending detailed technical specifications of alien technology, tactical assessments of alien capabilities, and comprehensive documentation of every weapon system the aliens had revealed. If other alien civilizations existed, if there were others who might someday face similar threats, humanity was making sure that intelligence would survive even if Earth didn't. Their communications suddenly became frantic, multiple voices speaking in overlapping alien languages. The ship's movement patterns changed from confident and methodical to urgent and desperate. Control, they're receiving multiple incoming transmissions from deep space. I think they're calling for backup. Admiral Chen's response was immediate. All units, Phase 5, maximum aggression protocols. We make our stand here and now. Phase 5 was humanity's final card, and it was one that no other species in the galaxy would have considered playing. Every remaining human asset, every hidden weapon, every desperate gambit they had been holding in reserve was thrown into a simultaneous attack designed not to win, but to cause maximum damage while broadcasting everything they learned to anyone who might be listening. It wasn't just carrying nuclear weapons. It was carrying the entire Earth internet, compressed into quantum storage systems and prepared for broadcast transmission. As Rodriguez initiated the final attack sequence, Bravo 6 began transmitting the complete cultural heritage of humanity toward every star system within 50 light-years. Human art, human music, human literature, human scientific discoveries, human philosophical debates, human dreams and hopes and fears, all of it flooding the galaxy with the message that Earth's children had existed, had created, had dared to reach for the stars. And embedded within that cultural broadcast was something more dangerous than any weapon. The complete technical specifications for every improvised tactic the humans had used against superior technology. The aliens realized what was happening and tried to jam the transmissions, but it was too late. The quantum broadcast systems had been designed by humans who understood that information wanted to be free, and jamming them only caused the transmission power to increase. As the alien vessel finally managed to destroy the last of the human platforms, as space around Earth fell silent except for the massive alien ship, Admiral Chen made one final transmission from the Pentagon's Deep Space Communication Array. This is Admiral Sarah Chen of Earth, broadcasting on all frequencies to anyone who can hear this message. Today, an alien civilization attempted to suppress humanity's natural development and force us into permanent containment. They have superior technology, superior weapons, and superior numbers. They have defeated our resistance and will probably succeed in restricting our species to Earth. The transmission continued as alien weapons began targeting Earth's surface installations, as the first energy beams began sterilizing humanity's space infrastructure. But they made one crucial mistake. They revealed themselves. They showed us their technology. They demonstrated that we are not alone in the galaxy and that some of our neighbors are not friendly. Most importantly, they proved that humans can fight against impossible odds and make our enemies pay a price they never expected. The Pentagon's communication array vanished in a flash of alien energy, but backup transmitters around the globe continued the broadcast to any species that might someday face a similar threat. Humans don't surrender. We don't submit. And we don't forgive. What happened here today was just the opening round. We will remember. We will learn. We will grow stronger. And someday when we have the strength to leave our world again, we will come looking for these aliens and anyone else who thinks they have the right to cage intelligent species. The final transmission came from Elena Vasquez, speaking from the archaeological site in Egypt where the alien artifacts had first been discovered. We are humanity. We survived the Ice Age. We survived plagues and wars and disasters that should have made us extinct. We turned wolves into dogs, fire into energy, and rocks into starships, and now we know we're not alone. Now we know there are others out there who fear what we might become. The alien ship's weapons turned toward the dig site in Egypt, but Elena continued speaking even as the energy beam began to form. They should fear us, because today, they didn't just attack humanity. They gave us a purpose. They gave us an enemy, and they gave us proof that anything is possible if you're willing to fight for it. The energy beam struck the archaeological site, but Elena's words were already spreading across Earth's remaining communication networks, copied and broadcast by millions of humans who had watched the space battle and understood what it meant. Humanity had lost the first round, but they had also learned that the galaxy was bigger than Earth, that humans weren't alone, and that there were enemies out there who could be beaten if you were clever enough, stubborn enough, and angry enough. The cosmic mistake had been made. The aliens had revealed themselves to a species that never forgot a grudge and never stopped fighting. They thought they had contained the threat by destroying humanity's space assets. Instead, they had just given every human on Earth the same impossible goal: get strong enough to leave the planet again, find the aliens who had caged them, and show them what happens when you corner a species that conquered an entire world through sheer refusal to give up. The war for the galaxy hadn't ended. It had just begun. 15 years after the first alien attack, Commander Elena Vasquez Chen stood in what had once been the deepest subway tunnel beneath New York City, watching engineers make final adjustments to humanity's most ambitious secret project. The tunnel had been expanded into a vast underground complex that officially didn't exist, housing technology that officially couldn't work, built by people who officially had died in the alien bombardment of Earth's major cities. The aliens had made their second mistake when they chose to rule Earth through intimidation rather than annihilation. They had stationed their massive vessels over every major population center, broadcasting constant reminders of human limitations and alien superiority. They had destroyed every obvious space installation, grounded every aircraft capable of reaching orbital altitude. What they hadn't anticipated was humanity's talent for making the impossible look routine. "Commander, we've got the final test results from the quantum displacement drive," reported Dr. Marcus Chen, who had aged 20 years in the underground but never lost his enthusiasm for pushing the boundaries of physics. "The Einstein violation is holding steady at 300%, and we're not detecting any space-time distortions that would alert their monitoring equipment." Elena nodded, though she still found it hard to believe they had actually solved faster-than-light travel by approaching it as a problem in applied stubbornness rather than theoretical physics. The breakthrough had come when Dr. Yuki Tanaka, working in a hidden laboratory beneath Mount Fuji, realized that humans didn't need to understand the universe's rules in order to break them. They just needed to refuse to accept that the rules applied to them. "What's our current production capacity?" Elena asked. "We've got 12 functional displacement drives ready for installation, with another 30 in various stages of completion. The manufacturing facilities in the Australian outback are producing components faster than we can assemble them." Elena allowed herself a small smile. The Australian facility was particularly satisfying because it was hidden directly beneath one of the alien monitoring stations. For 15 years, alien observers had been filing reports about the peaceful, compliant human miners working the uranium deposits below their feet, completely unaware that those miners were actually building weapon systems designed to turn their technological superiority into a liability. "Commander, incoming transmission from the European underground," called out Lieutenant Sarah Kim from the communications station. "Operation Prometheus is ready for implementation." Elena walked over to the secure communication array, a device that would have been impossible to build if humanity hadn't learned to treat theoretical physics as a set of suggestions rather than absolute laws. "Put them through." Klaus Weber, who had officially died in the bombardment of Geneva, but had actually spent the last 15 years building the most sophisticated intelligence network in human history. "The sleeper networks are in position, the displacement drives are tested and ready, and our inside sources confirm that the Galactic Council believes humanity has been successfully contained." "Inside sources?" Elena asked, though she thought she already knew the answer. "It took 12 years, but we finally managed to insert human operatives into the alien monitoring stations. Turns out that when you spend 15 years studying alien technology, psychology, and communication patterns, you can eventually figure out how to make them believe you're one of their own." Elena felt a chill of anticipation. Humanity's third great advantage, after stubbornness and unpredictability, was their talent for adaptation. Humans didn't just survive in new environments, they learned to thrive in them. And apparently, that included learning to thrive inside alien command structures. What's their current assessment of the human threat level? Minimal and declining. They believe our population is decreasing, our technology is reverting to pre-industrial levels, and our social structures are collapsing under the pressure of permanent occupation. They've actually reduced their monitoring efforts and moved most of their fleet to other systems where they perceive greater threats. Elena exchanged glances with Marcus, who was grinning like a teenager who had just successfully pranked the school principal. The aliens had made their third mistake. They had underestimated humanity's ability to pretend to be beaten while actually preparing for war. "Klaus, what's the status of our cultural preservation project? Complete and distributed." Every piece of human knowledge, every work of art, every scientific discovery, every philosophical insight, everything that makes us human has been encoded into quantum storage systems and hidden in locations the aliens will never think to search. Even if they decide to exterminate us completely, human civilization will survive. The Cultural Preservation Project had been Elena's personal obsession for the past decade. She had watched the aliens systematically destroy human museums, libraries, and universities, believing they were erasing dangerous knowledge. What they hadn't realized was that humans had been anticipating knowledge destruction for thousands of years, and they had gotten very good at hiding important information. The quantum storage systems were hidden in places that alien psychology couldn't fathom: sewage systems, garbage dumps, abandoned subway tunnels, and the basements of buildings that look completely ruined from the surface. Each storage system contained not just data, but entire virtual reality environments where future humans could experience their lost heritage. "Elena, we've got an incoming priority transmission from the Pacific Underground," Lieutenant Kim announced. "It's Admiral Chen." Elena's heart rate increased. Admiral Chen had been coordinating the most dangerous part of their resistance, the construction of a functional interstellar fleet using technology that the aliens believed they had successfully suppressed. "Put her through." The good news is that the fleet is ready. 37 fully functional starships, each one equipped with quantum displacement drives, adaptive weapon systems, and enough supplies to establish permanent colonies on habitable worlds. And the complicated news? We've discovered why the aliens were so determined to contain humanity. Our intelligence operatives intercepted a communication from the Galactic Council to the occupation forces. "Elena, we're not the first species they've done this to. They've been systematically suppressing the development of any civilization that shows signs of becoming a spacefaring power." Elena felt a cold rage building in her chest. "How many?" "At least 47 documented cases over the past 50,000 years. They identify promising species, allow them to develop to a certain level, then crush them back into primitiveness or containment. They call it galactic stability management, and the species that don't comply? Extinction, complete and total. They have a specialized fleet designed specifically for planetary sterilization. The implications hit Elena like a physical blow. Humanity wasn't special, they weren't uniquely threatening or uniquely valuable. They were just the latest in a long line of species that had been judged too dangerous to be allowed freedom. But they were also apparently the first species to have successfully hidden their true capabilities for 15 years, while building a secret interstellar fleet, which meant they might also be the first species with a real chance of fighting back. "Admiral, what's our current assessment of alien fleet strength in this system?" "Down to minimal occupation forces. Most of their serious military assets have been deployed to other systems where they're dealing with more immediate threats. They've left behind monitoring stations, orbital platforms for planetary bombardment, and enough firepower to destroy our surface infrastructure, but nothing that could stop a properly coordinated simultaneous attack." Elena made her decision. "Signal all underground facilities. Operation Renaissance begins in 72 hours. Operation Renaissance was humanity's fourth great innovation in dealing with superior enemies, the refusal to fight a fair fight. Instead of challenging the aliens to a direct confrontation, humans had planned to simply disappear. The 37 ships of the secret human fleet would launch simultaneously from hidden facilities around the globe, using quantum displacement drives to exit the solar system faster than the aliens could respond, but they wouldn't be running away. They would be spreading out across the galaxy, establishing hidden colonies on worlds the aliens didn't know about, and beginning the long process of building a human civilization that the Galactic Council couldn't find, couldn't contain, and couldn't control. More importantly, they would be searching for the other 47 species that had been suppressed or destroyed by the Council. Some of those species might still exist in hidden enclaves, or might have survivors who could be contacted and organized into a resistance movement. "Elena, there's something else," Admiral Chen continued. "The intercepted communications mentioned something called the Convergence Protocol. We're not sure what it means, but it seems to be related to a much larger threat that the Galactic Council is preparing to face. Larger than suppressing emerging civilizations? Much larger. The communications suggest that there's something beyond the galaxy, something that's been approaching for millions of years, and the Council believes that only a completely unified and controlled galaxy will have any chance of survival when it arrives. The aliens weren't conquering species out of cruelty or greed. They were preparing for a war on a scale that humanity couldn't yet comprehend, and they believed that independent, unpredictable civilizations like humanity would be liabilities in that war. They were probably right. Humans were unpredictable, independent, and absolutely unwilling to submit to authority that hadn't earned their respect through competence and moral clarity, which meant that when the greater threat arrived, humanity might be the galaxy's only hope of dealing with it in a way that didn't require the surrender of everything that made intelligent life worth preserving. Admiral, adjust the mission parameters for Operation Renaissance. We're not just establishing hidden colonies, we're building a resistance network. When that external threat arrives, the galaxy is going to need people who know how to fight impossible odds and win. Understood, Elena. But are you sure we're ready? 15 years isn't very long to prepare for a galactic war. Elena looked around the vast underground complex, filled with technology that shouldn't exist, built by people who had officially surrendered but actually spent 15 years preparing for the continuation of a war that had never really ended. Admiral, 15 years ago we were a single planet with primitive space technology. Today we're launching a secret interstellar fleet using faster-than-light drives that our own physicists admit violate known laws of physics. We've learned to hide from alien surveillance while building a civilization underground. We've infiltrated alien command structures and stolen their intelligence. Elena paused, thinking about the scope of what they had accomplished while pretending to be defeated. Most importantly, we've learned that the universe is much bigger and more dangerous than we thought, and that the only way to survive in it is to be more dangerous than anything that threatens us. Are we ready? Probably not, but we're human. Being ready was never the point. The point was being too stubborn to give up. In 72 hours, the aliens would wake up to discover that their perfectly controlled, completely contained human population had somehow built and launched a fleet of starships that shouldn't exist, using technology that defied their understanding of physics. They would also discover that 15 years of peaceful occupation had not broken human resistance. It had simply taught humans how to hide their preparations for the next round of a war that they had never considered surrendering. The cosmic mistake was expanding beyond a single solar system, and humanity was about to show the galaxy what happened when you tried to cage a species that had learned that the only real limitations were the ones you accepted. 25 years after the secret fleet had vanished from Earth, Fleet Admiral Elena Vasquez Chen stood on the bridge of the battleship Humanity's Wrath, watching the greatest concentration of alien warships in galactic history assemble around the Galactic Council's home system. Her hair was white now, her face marked by decades of impossible decisions, but her eyes still carried the same stubborn fire that had driven her to challenge the universe itself. The human fleet had grown from 37 ships to over 3,000, built in hidden shipyards scattered across 47 star systems. More importantly, they had found the survivors, remnant populations of 17 different species that the Galactic Council had tried to suppress, exile, or destroy. Species that had thought they were alone in their resistance until human diplomats had arrived with quantum communicators and an offer of alliance. "Admiral, we're receiving the final transmission from the Council's ultimatum," reported Captain Marcus Chen Kim, a name that represented the blending of two families that had helped birth humanity's age of space. "They're demanding that all insurgent forces surrender within 1 standard hour or face complete annihilation." Elena smiled, an expression that had learned to carry equal parts warmth and menace. "Captain, please transmit our response on all frequencies." "Aye, Admiral." Elena stepped forward to address not just the alien fleet arrayed before them, but the thousands of species across the galaxy who were listening to discover whether the uprising that had been building for 25 years would end in liberation or extinction. "This is Fleet Admiral Elena Vasquez Chen of the Human Resistance Fleet, speaking on behalf of the Free Galactic Alliance. To the members of the Galactic Council, your ultimatum is noted and rejected. To the species you have suppressed, controlled, and destroyed, today we demonstrate that your chains can be broken. To the universe itself, today we prove that intelligent life belongs to those with the courage to claim it." The response from the Council fleet was immediate. Energy weapons that could sterilize planets opened fire across space, seeking to eliminate the human fleet before it could demonstrate whatever impossible tactics had allowed it to survive for 2.5 decades. But the human ships weren't where they appeared to be. Quantum displacement technology had advanced far beyond simple faster-than-light travel. Human vessels now existed in a state of controlled uncertainty, occupying multiple possible positions simultaneously until the moment they chose to become real. The Council's weapons struck empty space, and the human fleet materialized in the gaps between alien formations. "All ships execute Protocol Defiance," Elena ordered. "Show them what 25 years of human engineering can accomplish." The battle that followed broke every rule of space warfare that the Galactic Council had established over 50,000 years of military supremacy. Human ships didn't fight like warships. They fought like living things, adapting and evolving their tactics in real time. When alien shields proved impervious to human weapons, the humans simply stopped trying to penetrate the shields and started using them as guidance systems for weapons that redefined the meaning of indirect fire. The breakthrough weapon was something the human engineers called reality anchors, Devices that forced alien ships to exist in normal space-time while human vessels continued to phase in and out of multiple dimensions simultaneously. The effect was devastating. Ships that had been virtually invulnerable suddenly found themselves solid targets for weapons that attacked from directions that didn't technically exist. But the real surprise came when the Council deployed their planet-killer weapons, massive energy projectors designed to sterilize entire worlds in minutes. The human fleet's response was to reveal that they had been infiltrating Council worlds for over a decade, not as conquerors, but as gardeners. Council Fleet Command, this is Admiral Chen. You have 30 seconds to power down your planet-killer weapons, or we will demonstrate why humans don't make empty threats. The Council's response was predictable. The planet killers began charging for a demonstration strike against one of the human colony worlds. Elena nodded to her communications officer. Activate the seeds. Across 700 Council worlds, in the deepest underground facilities, in the hearts of major cities, in the centers of military installations, devices that had been disguised as harmless mineral deposits suddenly activated. But they weren't bombs. They were terraforming engines, designed to transform hostile environments into paradises suitable for any form of carbon-based life. The effect was immediate and irreversible. Military bases found themselves overgrown with flowering vines that produced oxygen at an accelerated rate. Industrial centers discovered that their pollution control systems had been replaced with biological processors that turned waste into fertile soil. Urban areas began spontaneously generating parks, gardens, and ecosystems that enhanced the quality of life for every inhabitant. "You have turned our worlds into gardens," came a transmission from the Council fleet, and for the first time in the war, the alien voice carried confusion rather than authority. "Correct," Elena replied. "We could have turned them into graveyards, but that's not what humans do. We don't fight to destroy. We fight to create. Every world you've ever ruled is now more beautiful, more livable, and more capable of supporting life than it was before. Your people are breathing cleaner air, drinking purer water, and living in environments that will nurture them for thousands of years. What do you want?" The question came from multiple alien voices simultaneously, representing dozens of different species within the Council fleet. "We want you to understand what you've been doing for 50,000 years, Elena said. "You've been so afraid of chaos that you've been strangling the galaxy's potential for growth. You've been so concerned with stability that you've prevented the development of anything new, anything different, anything that might actually be able to help when the real crisis arrives. You know about the convergence? We know that something is coming from beyond the galaxy, something that requires a unified response. But unity doesn't mean uniformity. The galaxy doesn't need a single controlling power making all decisions for every species. It needs a diverse collection of civilizations, each contributing their unique strengths to a common defense." Elena paused, watching as the Council's planet-killer weapons powered down. Not because they had been ordered to, but because the crews operating them were making their own decisions about whether the fight was worth continuing. "We also know that humans aren't the answer to the convergence threat. We're too young, too reckless, too unpredictable to lead a galactic defense. But we're exactly the right species to shake things up, to break the patterns that haven't been working, to force everyone to think about problems in new ways." The response came from a new voice, one that carried the weight of millennia. "This is First Counselor Zethka-9 of the Galactic Council. You speak of cooperation, but your actions have destabilized 50,000 years of peaceful governance." "Peaceful?" Elena's voice carried an edge of genuine anger. "First Counselor, you've suppressed or destroyed 47 civilizations that we know about. You've turned the galaxy into a museum where nothing new is allowed to exist. You call that peaceful governance? We call it the slow death of everything that makes life worth living. The species we contained were threats to galactic stability. The species you contained were sources of new ideas, new technologies, new ways of thinking about problems. You eliminated them because they might have been difficult to control, not because they were actually dangerous. And in doing so, you've left the galaxy completely unprepared for a threat that requires innovative thinking rather than administrative efficiency." Elena looked around the bridge of her ship, at faces that represented not just humanity, but 17 other species that had been written off as failures by the Council's rigid standards. "First Counselor, the convergence is going to arrive whether we're ready or not. When it does, the galaxy is going to need every creative mind, every innovative technology, every species that refuses to accept that problems are unsolvable. You can either help us prepare a real defense, or you can continue trying to maintain control over a galaxy that's already changing whether you approve or not." The silence that followed lasted for nearly 10 minutes, during which the largest space battle in galactic history hung in perfect suspension. Finally, First Counselor Zethcat 9 spoke again. Admiral Chen, what are you proposing? A new galactic order. Not human domination, not council control, but a genuine alliance of free species working together because they choose to, not because they're forced to. Species that contribute their unique strengths to common projects while maintaining their independence and their right to develop in whatever directions their creativity takes them. And if we refuse? Elena's response was immediate and absolute. Then we continue doing what we've been doing for 25 years. We build, we grow, we explore, and we prepare for the convergence without you. But we won't stop other species from making their own choices about freedom, and we won't stop making council worlds more beautiful than they were when we found them. Another long pause. Then, you would continue terraforming our worlds even if we remained enemies? First Counselor, we're not trying to conquer the galaxy, we're trying to save it. That includes saving it from the mistakes you've been making for 50,000 years, but it also includes saving you from the consequences of those mistakes. Elena looked out at the vast alien fleet and made a decision that would determine the fate of the galaxy for millennia to come. The convergence is coming, and it's bigger than any of us. Humans can't face it alone. The Council can't face it alone. But together, with every species contributing their best ideas and their strongest efforts, we might have a chance. Not just to survive, but to show the universe that intelligent life is capable of growing, learning, and becoming something greater than the sum of its parts. The final transmission from the Council fleet came 6 hours later, after consultations with representatives from over 1,000 different worlds. Admiral Chen, the Galactic Council votes to dissolve itself and establish the Free Galactic Alliance under the principles you have described. But we will require guarantees that human expansion will respect the sovereignty of established civilizations. Elena smiled, thinking of the garden worlds humanity had left behind, the species they had helped rather than conquered, the technologies they had shared rather than hoarded. First Counselor, you have our word as a species that has spent 25 years proving that our goal is liberation, not domination. We want a galaxy where every species has the freedom to become whatever they're capable of becoming. The cosmic mistake had finally reached its inevitable conclusion. The aliens who had tried to cage humanity had discovered that humans didn't just break their own chains. They spent their freedom helping others do the same. And when the convergence finally arrived, it would find not a controlled, uniform galaxy, but a chaotic, creative alliance of species that had learned the most important lesson in the universe. The only way to face the impossible is to become more impossible than anything that threatens you. Now they would teach it to the galaxy.